over the last, at least 10 or 15 years in the industry, you've seen what some may call some, disturbing trends. And it kind of makes you wonder where the industry is going to go.
Yep.
And it makes you wonder what sort of role Industrial Insight is going to continue to play, and maybe the offerings that you need to put out into the market to better serve your customers. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm trying to figure out what does the future look like for us and what can we offer.
You guys already offer training.
We do.
And I think kind of the beginning of this was you guys offer training, but you can only train so much in between when the person gets hired and they're gone 3 years later.
Yeah.
And many times in Pi and the type of applications that you're working on, it takes a year or 2 years to get up to speed. So they get up to speed, they start making progress, and then they lose all of that progress because the entire engineering class is gone.
And then we start over.
That would be difficult for the end users, right? Like that would be difficult, and I would call it unsustainable. You can't hire a new engineering class every 3 years and get no measurable progress during those 3 years before you start over. Just to start the cycle over and over again, you would never get better. You would never solve your problem.
Well, you do get some progress, right? I think there's, like, one of the things we've been really trying to focus on is to not rebuild the tools over and over, because if you're not working with someone like us, and I've talked about this before. I think the video I did on the lighthouse, I talked about this. You get a really smart young engineer, comes in, solves a particular problem. That engineer that you figure out they're really smart, or somebody else does, and they either get promoted or they leave. Then the next engineer, comes in and somebody says, hey, the previous engineer solved it, here's their work. And they look at it and say, I don't understand what they did, I'm going to start over. So you're literally solving the same problem you solved 2 years ago, with a different person. Same problem. It's never been put to bed. But then again, I feel like in some customers we've been working with, we are making progress so that the next engineer that comes in is starting in a different place than the one that was there before. And so we're making progress. It's just not what it should be. And one of the things that I think really what sparked this video, one of my concerns is, at that point, sometimes we know more about the process than the process engineer does. Mm-hmm. And I was recounting a story to you off camera, a company I used to work for. We had a major customer of ours that was having a lot of early retirements and layoffs and things of that nature. Just, I don't agree with it, but it's just the way of the world now. You let people go to balance your expectations with Wall Street and your profitability. That's going to catch you eventually. And I think, we're going to start to see that. But what was happening, and I wasn't even close to the customer or anything. I was just kind of an outside observer in all this. And I said to myself, we now have more experience in making that product that company makes internally than they do. Because a lot of the people that they've had who've been their experts for years, either retired or were laid off, given early retirement packages, being bought out, and they came to work for us. I'm like, something's wrong with this picture.
Oh, yeah.
And I
scare everyone.
It does. It should. And then we were talking also off camera. It's like, well, is that really the message that we're trying to send here? And I'm like, well, yes, part of it. That's just part of me. I'm like, I'm really concerned. For an industry I've been in for 25 years now almost. Actually, a little over 25 years now that I think about it. But then it also, as a business owner, I have to think about what are the things I need to offer and we need to offer as services to our customers so that they can try as best they can to focus on the things we really shouldn't be focused on, right? And like this Pi training we did was really more administrative stuff. It was how to build tags, how to get data, out of their Kepware servers, through the OPC interface, build the tags, think about compression exception settings and make sure that you're getting good quality data, right? And Ben did part of it. especially on the Kepware and the OPC side, and then I did some on, you know, the data quality side, and then the asset framework part, like what can you actually potentially go do with it once you have all this data. So that was kind of one part of it. And then we kind of got to a point where I just asked the question, okay, what do you guys want to do now? We've spent basically 2 days with you. I could go deeper in what I've shown you, or maybe there's something else that you want to do. And they unanimously said, if you guys could help us actually go get data out of X machine, they picked out a machine. We want you guys here with us to help us literally get data from there into the Pi system, and we want to see data flowing, and we know it's good quality. Can you just work with us and help us actually go do it? And so a bunch of their engineers, like, you know, brought in some data. And it was, you know, it's just one of those things you're like, why are they taking that time to do that? I mean, it's not bad that they do and that they understand how the data gets there, but that's taking time away from them actually making the process better. Mm-hmm. And you know these people have a shelf life with you. Well, you don't know that, but you can only assume that in today's age. That's kind of the point and what we're talking about. So it got, you know, and like I said, another customer asked me, like, well, you know, why don't you just provide that service? Gee, I've never really thought about it. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. I've just never really thought about it. And maybe we need to. But one thing I think is really dangerous is for us to know more about the customer's process than the customer does. And there are companies like ours, I think especially like when you get into control system engineering companies, I would be willing to bet those folks know as much or more about how the sausage is made than the company does in a lot of cases. I think that's a dangerous precedent for companies, for the manufacturing companies themselves, that you could potentially be taken advantage of because this outside firm knows more than you do. You can't afford them not to be there. I think that's putting yourself in a bad position. So that's certainly from a pure market standpoint, I have concerns about, you know, but like I said, it's making me kind of rethink, well, without crossing that line, you know, and unfortunately we may end up doing that just because of the nature of what we do, you know, but how can we minimize that, right? I don't want any company to feel like they're a slave to Industrial Insight. You know, we're the only ones that know how anything works. This is why we push training on people. We want you to know. We don't want you to call us because we're the only ones that know. I think that's a dangerous, you know, place to be. So, you know, I guess my plea is out to customers and potential customers. And you don't even have to be a customer of ours. I'm just saying you're on the customer side. You're in a manufacturing plant and manufacturing organization. What are services and offerings you see a company like ours or a control system integrator, what are things that we need to be preparing to do for you that allow you to maintain as much expertise in-house, but yet the things that aren't as important, you're not doing? That'd be really interesting to know. Like, what is the feedback from the community on that? I'm not sure I know.
No, I think that brings up a good point. And to the counterpoint of you being worried about someone kind of being held hostage, in a previous life in systems integration, I had at least one customer who made the concerted choice that they were going to outsource all of the integration work. And they had, you know, maintenance, they had, you know, kind of IT on that side, but they had built the company, you know, with one or two contractors doing all of the integration work. Mm-hmm. And they made the choice of continuing to outsource it to another company because on their side, they could nearly infinitely scale up, right? So when you're to the point of having, you know, downtime, or when you're to the point of having, you know, off weeks, you can bring 3 or 4 people in to get all of the work you need done. But when you're not, you don't have to pay anyone. And if there are not any problems, then you don't have to have those people on the payroll, and you don't have to go through the process of trying to hire someone who might be a $200,000 a year guy who can do everything when you can outsource it at, $150 or $200 an hour to
Right.
get the experts that you need in place,
When you
as
need them.
opposed to trying to, yeah. And just exactly your point, Jim, you have a shelf life of most people working at facilities. So are you really going to go put them through a year and a half of training to then come back and hope that they stay long enough and give you enough, heads up that they're going to leave to be able to get the next person in and continue to go through that churn? And on your side, I would imagine it would take you or Ben or Tia significantly less time to pull machine data through Kepler into Pi and help an engineer visualize the data than it would for an engineer to spend 2 days in training and then 4 hours once a month to try to remember how they get there.
Yeah, and it was funny. One thing you just talked about reminded me of it's been a post I've seen on LinkedIn, a number of times, where I think it was like a CFO CEO discussion. One of them asked, well, what happens if we train people and then they leave?
And I think the other person responds, what happens if we don't train them and they stay?
Yeah, that's what that was how it is. And that's the thing, is like, it's the double-edged sword. What do you train them on? What are those key skills you need them to know so that they feel like they're growing and becoming more effective in their job, versus what skills are, have traditionally been in-house that now, maybe we just outsource all that. I don't know what that is. I certainly think some of the things we do fit that criteria, right? Yeah. I'm after having that conversation with a customer where he's like, well, why don't you just offer that service? I wasn't convinced. I'm becoming more convinced. I was like, you're right. Why should an engineer have to sit down and get the data out of the PLC and Kepler? They need to know how it's done. They need to know, that it can be done and what all it takes to get it done. But to your point, when we left, I guarantee you, they spent some time, a significant amount of time over the next couple of weeks, getting data out of some machinery that they knew that they needed to get data out of. Mm-hmm. Then they may not touch doing that again for 2 or 3 months. Mm-hmm. Then it may take them 3 times as long, and we still may get a phone call. Mm-hmm. So was that money well spent? And especially if you find out they're really good at what they do, and then you're going to promote them, because that's kind of, if you look at millennial Generation Z workforce and even really Gen X, like, we want to come in and have a purpose, and, we potentially want to move up. And it's much more rare today that someone wants to kind of stay in a similar role and really become a subject matter expert and become like that kind of engineering fellow type role, as it used to be called, whereas someone just becomes really, really specialized and really, really good at these 1 or 2 things. I see that less and less today, especially in this upcoming generation. They want variety. They want to move around. They want to gain all the expertise. They want to move around, both physically and within the company. They want to try different things and kind of figure out where they fit. So kind of knowing that that's what's going on, maybe the really highly specialized stuff that we do, creating that data incoming flow, looking at data quality, creating the visualizations, creating the analytics, creating some of the more advanced tools, that you would want to use. Maybe that's a skill that you don't really keep as much in-house. I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. And that's why we're having this discussion. We're going to put it out, because I'm trying to figure out is what do we look like in 5 or 10 years? What things are we offering that are of value, that hold true to the principles that I have and the vision that I have? I don't know. I don't know. And that's why I wanted to put this out there. Where do we draw those lines?
I think that you've sold me, Jim, right? I think that the path, the conversation that we're having, it would make sense for Industrial Insight to offer these services, and it would make sense for customers to take a strong, hard look and say, where do I want to invest bringing in subject matter experts, and where can I outsource some of those
Yeah.
for maybe less critical offerings.
And I'm biased. I think this is an extremely critical offering, right? I think what we do is very critical, especially in this day and age. And I think even as we have a lot of economic uncertainty, I think this is going to become even more important what we do, especially in an economic downturn, because companies are going to want to get more lean, more focused, more optimized. I just think that's going to happen. So what we do is going to become even more vitally important, right? But it's really, really difficult to maintain the skill level of what we do in an organization. Companies have not really focused on that, and at least not at the level that we typically work in. Yeah, they'll go hire data scientists and spend millions of dollars trying to create applications, on machine learning and artificial intelligence and all these things. But at this more grunt level, making sure that data coming off the plant floor is correct and using more basic blocking and tackling and first principles, the investment's not really there. And I think it's critical, and I think companies are starting to figure out it's really critical. So what's the balance?
Oh, I absolutely agree that it's critical. I absolutely agree that it will be more important moving into the future. I more so mean, who knows at the plant level if they think having one PI expert is more important as opposed to adding another applications engineer, adding another process engineer.
And it's not even PI too, because we've got customers that are using Canary, or they're using inductive automation, or they're dabbling with AWS, or whatever they're doing, right? It's using the plant floor data efficiently. It's whatever that is. Like where do you draw the line in the expertise you're going to keep in house versus you pay out? You pay someone else outside the company to do it. Where does that line get drawn, and how?
What is the utilization rate, right? So if we have a utilization rate of a person that is, call it a PI admin or a data person, and we use them 8 hours a week or 20 hours a week, somewhere in there, I think that it very quickly becomes the conversation of, is it less expensive and more efficient and better for our long term to bring an expert in like you guys and know that you'll be there for the next 20 years, 50 years, however long that's going to be. And they can call you and you'll know the system. Right. Or do we bring a person in? Do we send them to training? And then 3 years from now, we have done a bunch of good work, but we kind of hit a stop where we've got to bring you guys back in to get them back up to speed. And if you have to come and bring them up to speed, then you're going to have to be involved in some way, shape, and form throughout the entirety of the process. And on the industrial insight side, it could be a good opportunity for you guys to look at less experienced, more junior engineers and figure out how you can bring them in order to help grow more of that experience and to help give them firsthand knowledge and experience on customer data sides.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, two of my engineers now are, younger engineers. Tia's 27. I think she just turned 27. Forgive me, Tia. Don't kill me.
We'll bleep it out.
No, it's okay. I'm pretty sure it was 27 was her last birthday. Ben just turned 31 a few weeks ago. And the reality is they thoroughly enjoy what they're doing here because they're getting a lot of variety and getting to play a lot of cool stuff and really feel like they're making a difference in our customers' lives, So I'm all for, and they can live wherever they want. Tia's out in the Denver area, and Ben right now is here in Jacksonville, but he's talked about doing the vagabond life that you're doing. Buy a van and drive around, find a high-speed internet connection, and work from wherever wherever he ends up. And I'm okay with that. It doesn't matter. As long as he can meet customer commitments like, hey, I need to meet on Wednesday at 2:00 in the afternoon, or Thursday at 8 a.m. If you can do that, it really doesn't matter. And their deadlines are getting met, I'm good. But and it's interesting that, as you were talking, I was thinking about, a current situation with a customer that we're doing an ongoing agreement with, and I trained probably 10, I had the same conversation with them, 10 or 11 of their engineers 3 years ago. There's only a couple of those left, and almost none of them are in the same role. Mm-hmm. They have, a couple of them have moved to different parts of the plant. Mm-hmm. One of them is doing more like capital project work. Mm-hmm. Probably 4 or 5 of them have moved outside the company. One went to corporate, working on a completely different initiative. Mm-hmm. Now we have a whole different group. Now, fortunately, the 2 that moved into a different role within the plant, still in, kind of the engineering type role, we're still working with them heavily. Mm-hmm. One of them is still doing a fair amount of their own stuff from time to time, but still uses us heavily. She calls on Tia a lot. Mm-hmm. But she likes to do this stuff. She wants to know how it's all built, and, she has great ideas, and it's just what she wants to do. The other gentleman who was like that in his previous role, he's like, I don't have time to do that. I'm in a unit, I'm trying to learn. It's expanding, and I'm involved in that. I can't. He throws stuff over the wall now. He's like, mm-hmm. I just don't have time. I'm glad I know it, but I just don't have time. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of, younger engineers. So we had a recent conversation about, well, how do we get some of these new people that they've hired at least trained up? Do we go as deep? How do we at least get them where they understand how all this stuff comes together, right? And then one of the things that we've been discussing jointly between them and us, and kind of all given our perceptions, is like, what's the new normal? Mm-hmm. Because it's looking much more like our agreement's going to expand because their engineers are so busy. They don't have time to do the stuff that we had originally taught them how to do. Like, mm-hmm. Things have changed at the plant. It's expanding. It's growing. It's all hands on deck. They're shorthanded as it is, much less trying to go do the stuff we do. And it's more important that they have the stuff that we do now than it was 3 years ago, because they're trying to grow and expand, and things have to run good because they can sell all they can make in every unit. Mm-hmm. Their business has exploded. And so, in a customer like that, it makes a whole lot of sense in my mind, and it's starting to in theirs too. Maybe we don't have as much expertise in that, in that whole putting the data together. Like, it's great that we understand how it's done, because then we know what's possible. Yes. And we know kind of what it takes to do it, so we can ask the right questions and kind of know where the boundaries are, and when we're pushing beyond, boundaries we've hit in the past. But I think if they at least understand how all of this works, whether they're mm-hmm. an expert in it or not, if they can at least understand how it all works, then they're a lot more valuable both to their own company and to us. Mm-hmm. And then they can focus on the things we can't focus on, which is that process engineering side of things, right? And they can become that process expert, and we're just kind of the data expert and the pseudo process expert to a certain degree, right? Because we have to know the process to be able to put some of the stuff together. Like, we have to ask a lot of questions, about how things work. Like the video that we'll probably release this for, quite a while after, we're talking, but I just released a video a couple of days ago about this quality problem, in a chemical plant that I've been working on. And, why do we have a really good running period and then a poor running period and then a good running period? And, why are these 2 production units different? Well, I have to know enough. Like, I'm not a chemist. I'm not a chemical engineer. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know enough, to ask some really good questions and look at things from a different way. And I know some tools that can kind of help them get talking about things. So I'll never be the process experts that they are, but I'll know enough to be really dangerous, kind of a thing, So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting in the next. I think that really the next 5 years is going to be really kind of key in understanding all this, because what I'm seeing. I've told people this a lot recently. I started this in December 2016, and as we're shooting this, this is the 2nd of September of 2021. So we're 3 months out from our 5-year anniversary, right?
Wow.
I can't even fathom it, but we are. We're 3 months out from our 5th anniversary. And I remember trying to have these kinds of conversations with customers. Like if I had approached this chemical company that we're doing the ongoing agreement with that, hey, you need us X number of weeks a month to constantly work on this stuff, that would have been a very difficult conversation. And now that customer they literally said it, I kind of told them when we left the plant last time we went, I think we could probably work full time for you now. We could actually put a full time resource on your stuff, or that equivalent. There, 3 of us kind of move in and out of there, just based on skill set, knowledge, exactly what's needed. Ben does stuff for him. Tia does most of the stuff for him, and then I've got some things I'm working on, for them as well. Just because of certain knowledge I have and relationships I have. And I told them, like a month ago or so. No, 2 months ago, I think, you need to consider having us working full time. And they're like, maybe. And then a conversation I had with them a couple weeks ago was, is that enough? and 5 years ago, couldn't have that conversation. Even to say, hey, we need to be there a couple weeks a month, working with you guys all the time on this kind of stuff. They've been like, no, you're crazy. You're nuts, man. So I look at where we're at 5 years from when I started and how much easier the conversations are, because I think companies have figured out that they need this stuff. And, there's another company, we haven't done work for them for probably 3 years now. And I heard something I don't think I've heard from them for a long time, and maybe ever, is there was a guy that was pitching a particular solution in this data realm. And, the people who can write the check said, quit selling, tell us what you need. We get it.
Amazing.
And you're like, we just did a pilot for another customer, and then they ended up doing an enterprise deal. And a big reason why this particular division was like, we're ready, let's do this, was because of some of the work we did. They figured out, wow, this is really incredibly valuable for us. Millions of dollars in potential value here. And so the conversations today are a lot easier than they were 5 years ago to work with a company like ours on the kind of solutions we deliver. But now it's almost like, to a point, do you even need kind of the basic administration tasks of this very specialized system? Because I look at most, let's just take Pi for instance, which still requires a fair amount of administration. I would venture to say Canary probably doesn't take as much. But there's still things you have to know and be able to do, obviously. And, some of the other historians we've looked at, like IP21, we did a conversion. That would take still a considerable amount of administration if you're running that, just because it breaks a lot and it's slow and it's just going to take administration. So really any kind of data system, I think, is going to require some administration, to keep it right and add and, build it out as needed. Should that be in our domain? Should you just be paying us to manage that system? Because your Pi system admin has 3 jobs. They're the process engineer, or they're the controls engineer, and part-time IT kind of stuff as needed, and Pi. Or I don't see anyone like it used to be 10, 15 years ago where they're the Pi admin. That's their job. It's so rare now, because it's like, well, that's part of your job. That's like 30% of your job. But that's 50% of your job. Yep. So nobody's got the same level of expertise.
And I think the question becomes is when the PI admin, they're also a process engineer and two or three other things, are they actually doing any work on Pi, like the actual, what we would call admin work? Are they doing it until there's something that's broken?
That's
And
typical. Yeah.
yeah, and honestly, probably not, because they're also the process engineer and the process continues to run. And if there's not a fire in one
Right.
of the other parts of their job, that it's never the priority. So because it's never
Bingo.
the priority, then it just keeps it keeps getting pushed to the back burner up until the point that it's literally on fire. And then
Yeah.
they have to go, and then maybe we lose data, maybe we have, larger issues where lines don't run, and then it becomes a problem. And I would almost say that if someone like you guys, Jim, were doing much of the Pi admin work, it would probably help move forward many of the other problems that you get called in to solve, because
Potentially.
you've already done, yeah, because you would have a better idea of what's going on in the existing systems. And generally, you would know that the data is good because you guys would have gone through and made sure that data coming into the system is correct.
Yeah, and I think that would have to be part of the offering, right? Is to proactively monitor and maintain the systems. And like we have one customer we're working with right now. We're primarily doing helping them through upgrades. I mean, we're actually just there. They're pushing the buttons.
Mhm.
We're more there as I'm trying to figure out the right word here. We'll help them troubleshoot the system. If something doesn't go right, or we get an error, or we are kind of like, hey, let's make sure we do this, let's make sure this is functioning properly. Like, okay, before we do a Pi system, the upgrade on the server, let's make sure all the interfaces are buffering so we don't lose data. Let's take a backup of the AF server, not just the SQL backup, which they have to do because they have the rights to do that, but let's pull the XML file off just in case everything blows up and, we need to restore that. We at least have the XML file and we can re-backfill any data that might be there. So we're just kind of there to help them think through all the things. They're the ones pushing the buttons, and sometimes we don't even really have all the rights we need. Like, when they're doing the AF upgrades, they have all their stuff on a SQL cluster, which is a pretty common approach. Well, you have to run a set of SQL scripts separately. Well, we found this out because we got to a point where we kept getting errors, and when we go through the log files, we're like, I don't know what that means. And I was literally, we were all on the phone. I said, we need to call OSIsoft. Like, none of us on this phone are going to figure this out. Like, the product company needs to tell us, like, what does this mean? Because it's not in any of the documentation we can find. And we called them, and I ended up recording that. Kind of like what we're doing now. I put up on Camtasia, I threw it up on our private YouTube channel, and then the next time we ran into that, we're like, okay, what do we have to do again? Like, what was the exact commands? What was the exact order? We had it. So sometimes even just like doing those kind of things, just thinking through that, like where, we're just going to think about it a little bit differently,
Yep.
Where we really want to make sure that everything functions right. And plus, when it's not your system, like you're going to be overly cautious. Like, okay, we need to make sure this is working and that's working, make sure we don't do that, and all those things. So we're still kind of partnering with IT on a lot of things because we have to, because of what Pi touches, but a lot of times the heavy lifting of the administration type stuff, I mean, realistically, we could go in and do this, um, for them, and they'd have to give us some admin rights on some of the SQL stuff. But realistically, I think it's a really good partnership. But then you start to think, well, okay, they get asked to do a lot of stuff, maybe install a new interface, and they don't do it very often, or add tags, or do this, do that. Monitor the systems, like maybe monitor that something's wrong, like maybe they're not as proactive, to your point, as they need to be about it, because it's, hey, there's a problem, so I'm not going to look at it. Well, I'd rather know there was a problem before somebody called me and told me there was a problem, right? And so we've built some things in the past to help monitor things, and maybe we need to do some of those things. I'm just trying to understand, like, where does this all go, and like where is our best fit in this, and it's funny, we were talking off camera because Camtasia stopped recording on us there a minute, and so it was funny. Dave was telling, he's like, I'm actually convinced you need to do this now. Like, you need to do these administration things, and it almost sounds like you're convincing yourself to do it. And I'm like, I'm not necessarily convincing myself or not convincing myself. I'm just trying to talk through all the realities of what we see. And maybe this is something I need to rethink, because I didn't necessarily want to get in that, because there's a lot of companies that can go do that stuff. And, it was funny, this company I was just telling you about that we're doing the upgrades, they asked me point blank, do you do this work? And I said, yes, because we have to. It's something that comes along with all the fun stuff we really like to do, which is help customers solve problems. Mm-hmm. We need good data. We need to understand how the system works. And sometimes the customer's like, well, we just don't have the expertise. Can you help us with this problem? Can you help us with this upgrade? Can you do this? And we're like, yeah. Can you install our software? We got a company that, I think Tia's done 2 or 3 installs for them, from scratch. And, it comes with the territory of what we have to do. Like, sometimes we just have to go do that kind of work to, get to the fun stuff we want to do. So then it's like, well, how do we make that as painless as possible, and as seamless as possible, and as proactive as possible, so that it actually adds real value to the customer? I'm not sure what it looks like yet. And that's why I wanted to kind of talk through it on camera. I think it's a good video. It's a good thing to think through, because I'm actually surprised at how many people actually watch this. I go look at the YouTube stats, and it's funny because it belies how many people actually watch it, because a lot of times we'll post these on LinkedIn, and what we've noticed is you hit play on LinkedIn, it doesn't show up as a watch on YouTube. They don't share information. So a lot of times we embed it, in LinkedIn, and people watch it, and I get people who I don't really expect, to watch the videos or to look at Fishing Friday stuff, have done that. They've literally, there's been people just out of the woodwork like, hey, I was watching this video you did. And I'm like, really? You watched that? Or, I was on horn with a new, potentially new customer for us. I've dealt with the company for a long time, but new customer for Industrial Insight, yesterday. And there were people on there that were like, yeah, we've seen your Fishing Friday stuff. I'm like, really? You? So it's really interesting. So that's why it's kind of fun to put this stuff out there, because sometimes I'm surprised at who is paying attention, and there's people who have really great ideas, and they'll give them to me and say, hey, here's something you need to think about. And that's why we do this, is to do that, and just so you can get to know us too. So get to know me and get to know us as a company.
So Jim, what are the questions to the customers? What type of services are you thinking of offering that we're wondering if they'd be interested in?
I think the first one is some of the administrative type services, getting the data, into their historian systems, and keeping those systems running, maybe monitoring them on a proactive basis, making sure everything's running properly, doing the upgrades, all those things. I mean, it's, somewhat a specialized skill set that, we're seeing that administrators of these kind of systems have 2, 3, 4 jobs. This is just one of them. Would it be worth it to have a true specialist monitoring these systems and creating the content, if you will, for them? That's a big one. And then the other question I have is not really a services thing. It's more of just a general question, but what is the right line in outside expertise versus inside expertise? Like, where as a customer do you and should you draw the line on what your vendors know about what you do versus what you know about what you do? Because I think that line is shifting a lot more onto the vendor side. I don't know if that's a good trend. I mean, it's a good trend if you're a business owner like me, but for the industry, I don't know if that's a good trend. I don't think the experts should necessarily be outside the company. So that's just more of a general question. But really, the services one is the one I'm trying to figure out. So if you guys have opinions, please help me.
Absolutely. So, if you, please drop your thoughts in the comments or send Jim a message if this is something that you guys are interested in are interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, please tell us what you think about the video. This is a little bit outside what we normally do. Drop your comments below as to what you think on that. And Jim, I think we've done enough YouTube videos that we have to ask people to like and subscribe to the channel. We've crested over 200 subscribers.
Yeah, we're
And
such a big channel. You know,
we are.
we're on our way to 200,000, Dave. No, no, it's funny because I watch. You know, a lot of you guys know I'm a golfer and I'm a fisherman, so I watch a lot of golf or fishing related content. You know, and that is definitely something they do. Like, subscribe, comment. It does help the algorithm help people find your videos. You know, and if you're interested in the things we do, and we realize we're a niche player, niche market, we understand that, and that's okay. You know, I'm not looking to get 100,000 subscribers. I'm not like some other people we were just talking about off camera that seem to think that's the holy grail of all this. I want you guys as an audience to get to know me and get to know us and what we offer, and I want to make you think. I hope one day, you know, if I'm being completely honest, I hope one day that drives you to pick up the phone or pick up the keyboard and type me an email and say, hey, you know, we ought to explore doing business together. You seem like you really know what you're doing. You know, you really challenge my thinking, you know, and all that. I mean, I hope that one day, but, you know, really, I just want to keep challenging the market and keep people thinking differently. I think that'll be a legacy I can leave behind, whether you ever choose to do business with us or not. So please like, subscribe, comment. It does actually help. Whether you're watching this on LinkedIn, whether you're watching on YouTube itself, you know, hey, if you're watching on LinkedIn, go hit our YouTube channel and hit subscribe. It's not going to kill you. It's really not. You can always unsubscribe later if you really don't like what we're doing.